Herzlich willkommen, liebe Zuschauer, zu einer weiteren Folge von Im Auge des Bruders mit Scott Ritter hier auf unserem YouTube-Kanal Gegenpol. Mein Name ist Monique Stegemann und in dieser Woche geht es um folgende Themen. Wie unterscheidet sich die Lage an der russisch-ukrainischen Front heute von der Situation vor einem Jahr? Deutschland plant, eine volle Panzerbrigade in Litauen zu stationieren. Fürchtet sich Russland vor 5000 Bundeswehrsoldaten? Bundeskanzler Olaf Scholz schickt den ungarischen Ministerpräsidenten Viktor Orbán zum Kaffeetrinken. Wird die EU tatsächlich die Ukraine aufnehmen? Und Russland stellt 2 neue Atom-U-Boote in Betrieb. Welche Funktion haben Atom-U-Boote in der modernen Kriegsführung? Lieber Scott, da dies unser letztes Interview für dieses Jahr ist, lass uns mit einem Rückblick auf die Geschehnisse im Ukraine-Krieg in dem auslaufenden Jahr 2023 schauen. Zu Beginn dieses Jahres war zumindest der Westen sehr zuversichtlich gestartet, dass die Ukraine Russland mit einer Gegenoffensive empfindlich treffen werde. Es kursierte sogar die Idee einer Rückeroberung der Krim. Am Ende des Jahres müssen alle eingestehen, die ukrainische Offensive ist gescheitert. Kannst du das bitte präzisieren? Wie unterscheidet sich die Lage an der russisch-ukrainischen Front heute von der Situation Anfang 2023 und welche Auswirkungen hatte das Scheitern der ukrainischen Offensive?
Well, at the beginning of the year, we saw a Russian army that was still in transition, transitioning from the force that had been assembled to carry out the initial, or at least the initial goals and objectives of the special military operation as set forth in February 2022, namely to put pressure on Ukraine to get them to a negotiating table. That, of course, fell apart when the British Prime Minister and other Western leaders pressured Ukraine to walk away from a peace agreement that would have brought an end to the conflict. Then Russia transitioned into a second phase, which was to regain control of the Donbas territories. This manifested itself into a decision by the United States and NATO to dramatically ramp up the confrontation by providing Ukraine with over $100 billion worth of military assistance and financial assistance for the purpose of rebuilding a Ukrainian army capable of carrying out offensive operations against Russia. We saw this in the fall of 2022, the Ukrainian counteroffensives in the Kharkov region and on the right bank of the Kherson area. So the Russian army at the beginning of 2023 was an army that was reconfiguring itself to deal with this new reality. 300,000 mobilized reservists were being brought in, trained and brought in, and the Russian military had gone over on the strategic defensive while this was occurring. But a strategic defensive doesn't mean that everything is that Russia is only defending. Russia was carrying out continued offensive operations, for instance, in the Bakhmut region. That succeeded in Russia, capturing the city of Bakhmut. But by and large, we saw Russia on the strategic defensive, Ukraine seeking to transition into the strategic counteroffensive. And today, what we've seen is that the situation has flipped. The Ukrainian counteroffensive has failed dramatically. No meaningful successes whatsoever. Moreover, that $100+ billion worth of assistance provided by the West has been squandered. It's gone. Ukraine right now has no resources. They're running out of ammunition. They're running out of men. And they are compelled to go over to the strategic defensive, but they don't even have the means to successfully do this. Russia, on the other hand, not only defeated the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and let's stop calling it a Ukrainian counteroffensive, the NATO counteroffensive, because in defeating the Ukrainian army, Russia has also defeated NATO. NATO provided Ukraine with basically they stripped their arsenals bare to give Ukraine the weaponry necessary to carry out this counteroffensive, and it has failed. That weaponry has been destroyed. The Ukrainian troops trained to use this weaponry have been killed, captured, or wounded. The Russians, meanwhile, have an army that is not only intact but expanding, and Russia is transitioning over to the offensive, and we see sustained offensive operations along almost the entire line of contact. There will be no strategic pause. And so that's where we stand today, with the Ukrainian military having been strategically defeated and the strategic initiative having passed over to Russia.
Viel wird gesprochen über die militärischen Ziele der Ukraine, über das Fehlschlagen der Offensive, über die massiven Verluste an Menschenleben und Kriegsmaterial. Aber werfen wir doch einen Blick auf Russland. Wie hat sich die russische Strategie im Laufe des Jahres verändert? Man denke an Anfang 2023. Das war noch vor dem russischen Sieg in Bachmut, vor dem Aufstand der Gruppe Wagner, vor dem Zurückschlagen der ukrainischen Offensive. Welche militärischen Ziele konnte Russland im Laufe des Jahres realisieren? Welche sind fehlgeschlagen?
The Russian objective of the destruction of the Ukrainian military, the demilitarization, that was an initial goal, continues to be a goal, and it's succeeded to a large part. The Ukrainian military is effectively destroyed. The other Russian objective of denazification is a political objective. It's not just about eliminating those elements within Ukrainian society and the Ukrainian military that have identified themselves as, affiliated with the ideology of Stepan Bandera, the neo-Nazis, white supremacists, etc. But it's also about changing the political dynamic inside Ukraine that tolerates this kind of Nazi ideology. As we look right now, Ukraine is in a state of political chaos. Zelensky is no longer the man of the year. He is the forgotten man. And he is a man who is now being openly challenged politically inside Ukraine. We're seeing the political collapse of Ukraine. And that's the Russian objective, because denazification cannot occur so long as a Zelensky-type regime remains in power in Ukraine. It will be essential to see the collapse of the current regime in Ukraine and have it replaced by one that will be amenable to changing the Ukrainian constitution when it comes to issues like NATO membership. Ukraine will have to be a neutral country. There will have to be a government capable of buying into this neutrality, and there have to be a government capable of purging Ukraine of its ultra-nationalist political elements. And that can't happen unless there is a regime change. And Russia is in the process of creating the conditions for this regime change. So I think, as I said, Russia has the strategic advantage across the board. They are destroying the Ukrainian military, that's demilitarization, and they're collapsing the Ukrainian political system, that's denazification. And ultimately what will emerge is a neutral Ukraine, which is what Russia always wanted.
Schauen wir nach vorne in das kommende Jahr. Mit welchen Entwicklungen rechnest du in den kommenden Monaten? So meldete zum Beispiel der Kommandeur der ukrainischen Bodentruppen, General Alexander Syrski, schon Anfang Dezember, dass die russischen Truppen an allen Fronten zu Offensivoperationen übergegangen seien. Der ukrainische Oberkommandierende Valery Saluschny soll angeordnet haben, dass sich die ukrainische Armee zur Frontbegradigung aus zahlreichen Ortschaften zurückzieht. Erleben wir eine Art Ouvertüre zu einer russischen Winteroffensive? Was plant die russische Militärführung?
Well, to be frank, I don't know what the Russian military leadership is planning. They don't call me, and I don't call them. But I think it's clear that Russia has expended a lot of resources to get to this position that they enjoy today, the strategic defeat of Ukraine. Any pause in the pressure being put on Ukraine militarily will allow this strategic victory to dissipate. So I don't believe you're going to see Russia going over to the defensive, a winter pause. I believe you're going to see Russia continuing to put offensive pressure on Ukraine throughout the winter. exploiting Ukrainian weakness and guaranteeing that Ukraine will not be able to reconstitute or rebuild its military strength. And that's the situation. As we go into 2024, I don't see Russia letting up the pressure. There may be a pause to allow Ukraine the opportunity for elections that could replace Zelensky and maybe put somebody in place who'd be willing to negotiate an end to this conflict. But if that doesn't happen, then Russia will finish this war using military force. And I see a major Russian military offensive shaping up, a war-ending military offensive shaping up for the spring and early summer of 2024.
Hinter den Kulissen bereiten die USA laut einem Bericht der New York Times bereits eine neue Strategie für die Ukraine vor. Diese beinhaltet zum einen, dass US-General Antonio Arjuto seinen Sitz aus Deutschland nach Kiew verlegt. Mithilfe von Kriegsspielen in Wiesbaden soll die Ukraine eine Strategie adaptieren, um bis Ende 2024 durchzuhalten. Ende 2024 soll dann eine neue ukrainische Gegenoffensive gestartet werden. Was sagst du zu diesen Plänen? Wie planen die USA, die Ukraine aufzurüsten? Und wen soll die Ukraine für die nächste Offensive rekrutieren? Frauen und Jugendliche? Schon jetzt melden offizielle Stimmen aus der Ukraine, dass die Rekrutierung nicht mehr funktioniert. Wird es vielleicht Zwangsrekrutierungen geben?
Look, it's up to Ukraine to decide how they're going to recruit people. I think you're seeing increasing resistance to this because it's in support of a futile effort. Forceful recruitment means that the Ukrainian people don't believe in this war anymore. A Russian military commander was interviewed the other day. He's receiving volunteers from Russia. According to the Russian government, 1,500 people volunteer a day to join the fighting. He was interviewing a man who he said normally the military wouldn't give second thought to. He wasn't a superb physical specimen. He was middle-aged in his 40s. He had glasses thicker than mine. And he asked the man, "Why are you here? What do you do?" He said, "I'm a mortar man. I fire mortars." He said, "But why are you here? Why are you here in the front line?" He said, "Because there's no other place for me to be. I believe in this war. I have to be here. I have to serve my country." You see, Russia doesn't have a recruiting problem. The Russian nation is behind this conflict. Middle-aged men who should be at home putting ointment on their arthritis and dealing with their wives and their children and their families are instead leaving that because to defend that, they have to defeat not just Ukraine, but the Western forces that are using Ukraine to try and destroy Russia. Russia has no recruiting problem. Ukraine has a recruiting problem because the system that the Ukrainian people are being asked to defend is a corrupt system, a broken system, a system that stands for nothing but the destruction of Russia. And people are realizing that Ukraine can't destroy Russia, that what's happening here is the destruction of Ukraine. So how Ukraine will mobilize, it's up to them, but whoever they mobilize, they won't believe in this fight. And therefore, if their heart's not in the fight, they're either going to die, they're going to be captured, or they're going to run away. That's the future of the Ukrainian army. As for the American general going into Kiev, on the one hand, one would say it's a very dangerous task going to Kiev because it becomes a decision-making center, and Russia has vowed to strike decision-making centers, especially NATO decision-making centers that relocate into Ukraine. But in this case, I think Russia will encourage this lieutenant general to travel to Ukraine as much as possible because it's sheer fantasy what he's trying to do. The war games that they're talking about now are similar to the war games that they had done in the lead up to the Ukrainian counteroffensive, taking NATO wargaming simulations and trying to impose it on a reality on the Russian-Ukrainian battlefield that doesn't exist in their computers. And as a result, they created a notion that Ukraine could succeed in this counteroffensive when Ukraine was never going to succeed. Now they're going to try and come up with a computer simulation for Ukrainian defensive warfare. It won't work. The reality is far different. Whatever game they come up with won't manifest itself on the battlefield. It will just lead to Ukraine being destroyed in an even more comprehensive fashion. So I see Russia letting this American general travel to Ukraine as much as he wants to, because it helps the Russian war effort, because trying to get Ukraine to fight like a NATO army is an impossibility. And to be honest, even if it was a NATO army, NATO doesn't have a doctrine or the capabilities assembled that can defeat Russia. So, this is just an exercise in futility. We're seeing Russian dominance across the entire spectrum of this war, and nothing NATO or Ukraine does will change that outcome.
US-Präsident Joe Biden warnte vor kurzem, eine Einstellung der Ukraine-Unterstützung wäre absolut verrückt und gegen die US-Interessen. Man dürfe Putin nicht gewinnen lassen. Dennoch wächst in den USA der Widerstand gegen eine Fortsetzung der finanziellen Unterstützung Kiews, insbesondere unter den Republikanern. Was sagst du? Wie lange noch werden die USA die Ukraine unterstützen? Und wie bewertest du als US-Bürger die Aussagen von Biden? Ist die Unterstützung der Ukraine wirklich im US-Interesse?
I mean, as a U.S. citizen, I know that there are numerous other problems in the United States that pose a far greater challenge to the American people in our way of living than Ukraine. We have homelessness, we have education problems, we have healthcare issues, we have infrastructure issues. All of these could benefit from a $60 billion boost, but we're not getting it. Instead, we're giving that money to Ukraine. The Ukrainian conflict doesn't help the United States at all in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it weakens the United States morally. It weakens us physically. We're giving away equipment to a Ukrainian military that can't beat Russia, so it's just getting this equipment destroyed. And it's accelerating forces of geopolitical change in a way that that is outside the span of control of the United States. Look, we live in a changing world. There's no doubt about that. But the United States would do well to help guide this change so that it doesn't detrimentally impact America on the global stage and domestically at home. But right now, the situation is out of control. The United States is in control of nothing. As the world transitions, it's being influenced by Russia, China, and other parties. The United States, is basically all we can do is throw good money after bad. But at the end of the day, Ukraine is a political problem for our president. That's it. The loss of Ukraine will impact American national security like the loss of Afghanistan did. Not at all. And we will run away from Ukraine like we ran away from Afghanistan. Remember, the president said all sorts of nice words about the importance of Afghanistan strategically, how we couldn't lose there, et cetera. And yet we walked away, and America hasn't talked about Afghanistan since then. I will guess that by the time the U.S. presidential election comes around in 2024, we won't be talking too much about Ukraine either, because we'll have abandoned Ukraine and we'll have forgotten about Ukraine and we'll be worried about other issues.
Auch Deutschland will sich an Krieg und Aufrüstung in Europa stärker beteiligen. Am Montag unterzeichnete Bundesverteidigungsminister Boris Pistorius in Litauen einen Vertrag, wonach Deutschland sich verpflichtet, eine kampffähige Panzerbrigade mit einer Truppenstärke von 5000 Mann in unmittelbarer Nähe der litauisch-weißrussischen Grenze zu stationieren. Schon jetzt führt Deutschland in Litauen eine Kampfgruppe der NATO an und ist mit ca. 1700 Soldaten im Land präsent. Was sagst du zu den Plänen Deutschlands? Hat Deutschland überhaupt die Stärke, eine solche militärische Präsenz dauerhaft aufrechtzuerhalten? Und welchen militärischen Zweck hat diese? Fürchtet sich Russland vor 5000 Bundeswehrsoldaten?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's going to be a big challenge. It was a huge challenge for Germany to generate this reinforced battalion that they currently have in Lithuania. They had to cannibalize the majority of their armor forces to get this battalion to be capable of deploying. Now they're talking about a brigade. I don't know where they're going to get this strength, but let's just assume that they do. That means that they have nothing left. A brigade in combat will last about 2 to 3 days. Then they'll all be dead. What does Germany plan to do to replace them? Come up with another brigade that they don't have? I mean, the German army is a joke, a literal joke. I think in a recent interview, a German official lamented that it's going to take Germany 5 years to rebuild its military. And by the time that's done, if Russia wanted to come, Russia would already be at the Oder River before the German military was. Germany has no military. They don't have the economy capable of rebuilding a military. Their economy is in free fall as we speak. So Germany can sign documents, make commitments. I will tell you this, that Russia isn't losing, in my opinion, Russia isn't losing any sleep over 5,000 schnitzel-eating German soldiers in Lithuania because they don't know how to fight. Literally, they don't know how to fight. The German army can't fight. They don't know how to fight. They're not motivated to fight. These aren't killers. These are, these are men. These are heart attacks waiting to happen. These are men who have high cholesterol because of their food consumption and their beer consumption. They're not physically fit. They're not motivated to serve. Why are they serving the German military? Do they wake up every morning and say, I'm physically fit, I'm running, I'm putting a 90-pound pack on my back, I'm hiking to be prepared for the rigors of war. I wake every morning and dream of Russian tactics and how to overcome them. Or do they get up in the morning and worry about their union and worry about, how much leave they have? It's Christmas time. Can they go to Christmas market? Can they do this? The German army is not a professional military force. It's a joke. And it's a tragic joke if they ever want to fight the Russians, because the Russians are a professional military whose soldiers wake up every morning saying, how can I kill NATO if NATO wants to fight? And they're doing it right now. When was the last time a German soldier took out a T-72 tank, a T-80 tank, a T-90 tank? Do they even know what a T-72 tank is, a T-80 tank, a T-90 tank is? Oh, they'll learn if they want to go to war with Russia. But I'll tell you what, the Russians are pretty damn good at taking out German Leopard tanks, because they've been doing it for a long time now. They know the German steel burns, baby, burns. So bring it on, Germany. You want to play stupid? You win stupid prizes. And the stupid prize will be every single one of those fat schnitzel beer-drinking soldiers you put in Lithuania will be dead if you want to go to war. Before you go to war, become warriors. Train. Build a military. But then you have to ask yourself why you're building a military. For what purpose? Because Russia doesn't pose a threat to you. And all the German soldiers out there, if you think I'm wrong, prove me wrong. Wake up tomorrow morning and go on a damn 20-mile forced march right now as if your life depended upon it, because that's what war is about. It's not about staying comfortable in your barracks. Go out and try and maintain your tank in frozen weather, trapped in mud. Maintain your tank there, not in an air-conditioned, humidity-controlled warehouse. That ain't war. You don't know what war is. Your grandfathers knew what war was. They fought the Russians, and guess what? They got their asses handed to them, and you will get your asses handed to them as well. Germany, wake up. Why do you even talk the language of war? Haven't you learned your lesson?
Schauen wir auf die EU. Ende letzter Woche haben 26 der 27 EU-Mitgliedstaaten auf der Tagung des Europäischen Rates zugestimmt, die Beitrittsverhandlungen mit der Ukraine zu beginnen. Um ein Veto vom ungarischen Ministerpräsidenten Viktor Orbán zu umgehen, hatte Bundeskanzler Olaf Scholz ihm empfohlen, den Sitzungssaal zu verlassen, um einen Kaffee trinken zu gehen. Scholz wurde dafür in den deutschen Medien nachgefeiert, Orbán hingegen mit Spott bedeckt. Die Medien freuen sich über einen Rückschlag für den Putin-Freund Orbán. Wie bewertest du diese Prozesse? Was sagt es über die EU aus, wenn kritische Mitglieder wie Ungarn kurzerhand zum Kaffeetrinken geschickt werden, um Einigkeit zu inszenieren? Rechnest du damit, dass die Ukraine in die EU aufgenommen wird?
I think this is all political gamesmanship right now. Ukraine doesn't qualify to be a member of the EU. I mean, it's funny. Why is Germany talking about bringing in Ukraine to the EU? Isn't Germany the largest economy of the EU? Isn't the German economy the foundation of the EU? The German economy is floundering right now. Floundering. You're shrinking. You're getting weaker because of the Ukraine conflict. And now you're going to bring Ukraine in. And that means that you're going to have to pay for Ukraine. You're going to have to build Ukraine up. You can't afford it. So it's all a joke. Ukraine will never be a member of the European Union. This is all a political show. It's all a political game trying to create this face of unity. But behind the scenes, Europe is falling apart. Ukraine is falling apart. So this is just a joke. Scholz is a joke. The German government is a joke, a tragic joke. They're not even good comedians anymore. Guess what? If the German media is applauding them, what's it say about the German media? And if the German population is consuming this media, what's it say about the German population? You guys are jokes, literal jokes. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and laugh at yourselves, because that's all you are. You're really going to bring Ukraine, the most corrupt nation on the planet, a failing economy that can only stay alive if you, Europe, inject 50 billion euros and America injects $60 billion. That's the only way it stays alive. It's not a viable economy, and you're going to really bring them into the European Union. Who are you fooling? No one believes you. Orban's the only sane person there. Let's just put it this way. Orban will be in power long after Scholz is compelled to leave because of his incompetence. In Germany, the world is laughing at you, not cheering you.
Wenn wir schon über den ungarischen Ministerpräsidenten Orban sprechen, es ist kein Geheimnis, dass hinter den Kulissen ein Pokerspiel um 30 Milliarden Euro stattgefunden hat, die Ungarn zustehen, aber von Brüssel zurückgehalten werden. Einen Tag vor der entscheidenden Tagung des Europäischen Rates hat die EU-Kommission 10 Milliarden davon freigegeben. Auf der Sitzung dann enthielt sich Orban der Abstimmung, trotz flammender Proteste gegen einen EU-Beitritt der Ukraine. Hat sich Orban kaufen lassen von der EU? Welche Strategie verfolgen Ungarn und Orban? Und ist er ein trojanisches Pferd Putins, wie deutsche Medien titulieren?
It's curious that the German media would call Orban a Trojan horse of Putin, when what is Scholz but not even a Trojan horse he's a poodle of Biden. Come on, guys. Okay, can you breathe? Do you feel the leash, the American leash around your neck as they hold you? Germany's a joke. Orban is Orban. The one thing about Russia is they believe in sovereignty. Orban will do what a sovereign leader wants to do. He made a decision. Look, Hungary's in a very difficult spot because they are a member of the European Union and their economy is directly linked to the European Union. European Union has withheld money that's rightfully Hungary's. Was he bought off? Ukraine isn't a member of NATO or of the European Union yet. They never will be. So all the European Union did is throw 10 billion euros at Orban, who's going to use it. He let them have their stupid conversation. You want to be stupid? Be stupid. Orban's not going to stop you from being stupid. Orban in Hungary will never allow Ukraine to join the EU. It won't happen. Not only will not Orban allow it, the EU won't allow it. All these people right now that are saying they want Ukraine to be a member, I'll ask you right now, Germany, vote yes, right now. Let them in. Unify with them right now. Screw the EU, Germany. Just pass your own laws because you are Germany, after all. Uber alles. Bring them in. Invite them. Unite with them. Say, we are one with Ukraine. You won't because you don't like Ukraine. You hate Ukraine. You despise Ukraine. You're just using Ukraine. You disgust me.
Blicken wir nach Russland. Vergangene Woche hat der russische Präsident Wladimir Putin 2 neue Atom-U-Boote in Dienst gestellt. Eines aus der Boré-Klasse, eines aus der Jasin-Klasse. Beide stammen somit aus der modernsten, der 4. Generation von Atom-U-Booten. Welches Zeichen sendet Russland damit in die Welt und vor allem gegenüber potenziellen militärischen Gegnern? Welche Bedeutung haben die Atom-U-Boote für das russische Militär?
Russia has a strategic nuclear deterrence that's being updated because the United States, Europe, and NATO have refused to engage in responsible arms control negotiations. The United States has allowed the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty they walked away from it on a lie about Russian noncompliance, and they're basically cheating with the New START Treaty. And what Russia's saying is that, when the United States and NATO have a policy of seeking the strategic defeat of Russia, Russia will never be strategically defeated. Russia's nuclear deterrence is designed to guarantee that. So modernizing their nuclear strike force with two new submarines. They've also upgraded their land-based deterrence with the deployment of new Sarmat missiles, new Yars missiles, the Avant-Garde hypersonic warhead. What Russia is saying to the world is that we cannot be defeated, that if you think you can defeat us, you can't. And the consequences of your trying to defeat us will be your death. And that's what the submarine is, a constant reminder to the world that while Russia doesn't want to rule the world, a world without Russia won't exist. That's something that Vladimir Putin has said repeatedly. A world without Russia won't exist. Russia's deploying the means to back that up. They don't bluff. See, Russia will blow up the entire world if the world tries to destroy Russia. That's what nuclear deterrence is all about, to deter you from trying to do something. So maybe it's time that Germany stops talking about Ukraine unification, Ukraine joining NATO, and maybe Germany might want to pick up the phone and start calling Russia to say, how do we prevent the conditions that will lead to the death of every German? Isn't that what a German leader is supposed to be looking out for, the German people? Do the German people understand that they will all die in a nuclear war, every single one of you? So, Russia isn't bluffing. We have a situation where the United States, NATO, Germany have called for the strategic defeat of Russia. The deployment of these nuclear weapons guarantees that Russia will never be strategically defeated.
Kannst du da bitte ins Detail gehen? Welche Funktion haben Atom-U-Boote in der modernen Kriegsführung beziehungsweise in der militärischen Strategie? Und wie schneiden die neuesten russischen Atom-U-Boote im Vergleich mit den US-amerikanischen ab, etwa der Ohio-Klasse?
Well, nuclear submarines provide, in theory at least, the combination of survivability and lethality. They're hard to detect, so once they go on patrol, they basically disappear. So it's very hard if you're going to launch a preemptive strike to take out these submarines. And if you don't take out these submarines, each submarine has the capability of destroying a nation. And so, it's basically telling the United States that don't launch a surprise attack against us, because even if you succeed in taking out everything on the land, we have submarines that will destroy you. The United States has the same thing, the Ohio-class submarines. Our submarines are older. We're seeking to modernize, to deploy a whole new class of submarines. It's going to cost, hundreds of billions of dollars to do this. Russia now has the advantage in submarines in terms of the, how modern they are, the technology. Numbers wise, the United States has more submarines, but like I said, they're getting old, and we're going to have to replace them. And so when we talk about replacement submarines, modern submarines, Russia actually has the lead right now in terms of deploying, top of the line, high technology submarines. But at the end of the day, these submarines exist for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to deter other nations from carrying out nuclear attacks. And that's the purpose of the Russian submarines. That's the purpose of the Ohio-class submarine.
Operieren US-U-Boote derzeit in geringer Entfernung zu Russland und China? Macht Russland das Gleiche gegenüber den USA?
Where U.S. submarines are deployed is it's a classified thing. I don't know where they're deployed. One would imagine that one of the scenarios is for American submarines to get as close to Russian and Chinese shores as possible, so that when the missiles are launched, there's a very one, they can be fired on a flatter trajectory, makes it more difficult for them to be intercepted, and two, the time of flight is reduced, so you get a higher probability of kill. But it's also riskier because you're coming closer to a shore. There's detection systems that have been deployed that could detect you. The Russians and Chinese could deploy attack submarines to trail you, so that if you ever seek to surface to fire your missiles, you'll be sunk. So the better option is to stay out in the middle of the ocean, deep and quiet, and out of sight, out of mind. More difficult to deploy. But again, the various operating procedures and tactics that are used for missile submarines is a huge state secret, because if you tell people where you are, they'll look for you and they'll kill you, and then you lose your deterrent value. So I don't know where American submarines are, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you. And I don't know where Russian submarines are, and if I did, then they made a huge mistake in letting me know. These are things that are highly classified for not only the United States and Russia, but China has submarines. They aren't going to tell you where they're deployed. Like Great Britain uses nuclear submarines. France has nuclear submarines. The key to their deterrent value is the secrecy surrounding their operations.
Lass uns zum Ende unseres Interviews noch einmal den Blick schweifen lassen über die geopolitischen Entwicklungen im auslaufenden Jahr. Wir haben mit der Erweiterung der BRICS um 6 weitere Staaten, auch wenn Argentinien mittlerweile auf der Kippe steht, einen historischen Meilenstein des Bündnisses erlebt. Aber nicht nur das, ein Großteil des Handels zwischen den BRICS-Staaten findet mittlerweile ohne US-Dollar statt. Zu erinnern wäre auch an den Afrika-Gipfel in St. Petersburg im Juli, wo alle 54 Staaten Afrikas anwesend waren und deutlich gemacht haben, dass sie sich keineswegs der westlichen Sanktionswut beugen werden. Afrika ist auch unser Stichwort. Dort haben wir Ende Juli den Putsch in Niger erlebt und die Formierung eines innerafrikanischen Verteidigungsbündnisses zwischen Niger, Mali und Burkina Faso. Wir könnten noch mehr geopolitische Ereignisse aufzählen, vielleicht kannst du an dem Punkt einsteigen. Sind wir gerade Zeitzeugen eines globalen Überganges zu einer multipolaren Weltordnung? Wie sehr haben sich diese Prozesse im auslaufenden Jahr verstärkt und wohin führen sie im kommenden Jahr?
I just had a very interesting discussion with the dean of international and public affairs at MGIMO, the Russian Institute on International Relations, and we talked about this very question, and he spoke of that you have to view this in 2 things. One, of course, you have what's actually happening, which is this transition, de-dollarization, etc. But he also talked about institutions. And he pointed out that even though we see this transition from, an American singularity to a multipolarity, the institutions remain the same. There's still a Security Council of the United Nations. There's still OSCE. There's still the IMF. There's still the World Bank. Basically that the institutions that define how the world interrelates with each other haven't changed. BRICS has not become an institution yet. BRICS is still very much a movement in its infancy. It's expanding, but it doesn't have institutions that can challenge the current institutions. So I think that's going to be the struggle. We see conceptually the world is moving away from the American singularity, but so long as these institutions remain, that America has played a large role in shaping, defining, and implementing, and controlling, it's going to be very difficult to speak of a genuine transformation away from America to a multipolar world. First of all, these institutions can support a multipolar world. So you may see a struggle within these institutions on who's going to control it more, the United States or a new geopolitical reality that's manifested in BRICS. Or will BRICS seek to make its own institutions that will seek to replace these? So I think that's what we're looking at right now. I don't think you're going to see a dramatic shift because the drama's already occurred. We already see people committed to moving away from American singularity, but the framework for this to happen doesn't exist because the framework is the institutions that the United States has crafted to support the American singularity. So until BRICS or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or other multipolar forums can develop institutions of their own or take over existing institutional frameworks, the United States will continue to be the most relevant nation in the world. And I think that's what we're going to see in 2024 and beyond. It'll be a struggle, but America's not going away. America will continue to dominate the world because the world is structure to facilitate American domination. And right now, Russia, China, India, these nations that seek to move away from American dominance, they don't have institutions that can challenge the American-controlled institutions. So I think we're going to be looking at a struggle, an institutional struggle in the years ahead. That's where the real fighting is going to be.
Zum Schluss noch eine Frage. Welche Prognose hast du für das Jahr 2024? Wie wird sich die Welt verändert haben, wenn wir Ende 2024 sprechen? Wird der Krieg in der Ukraine noch andauern? Wird Israel immer noch Gaza bombardieren? Wird es neue Kriegsgebiete geben?
I think 2024 we're going to see a dramatic change in the Ukrainian conflict. I think we're going to see not just the strategic defeat of Ukraine, but the elimination of Ukraine as we currently know it. One way or another, this conflict will be terminated, and it won't terminate well for Ukraine. I think the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will transition away from the horrible genocide that we see taking place right now into more of a political arena. But it's going to be an arena where the world will first have to learn how to deal with a victorious Hamas. How will Hamas factor in? What mechanisms can be put in place that will lead to the possibility of negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians about the future of a Palestinian state, because Hamas will never be silenced after what has happened here. Israel has failed to destroy Hamas. Hamas has emerged politically victorious. They're holding their own on the battlefield. The world is rallied around the Palestinian cause. So I think we're going to see the Arab-Israeli conflict move into a very difficult period of political negotiations. China will be also on the headlines here. We have elections in China and Taiwan coming up next year, and those elections will determine whether or not Taiwan buys into a new government that's willing to talk with China about peaceful reunification, or the re-empowerment of the incumbent government, which will continue to track closer to the United States, seeking de facto independence from China, and therefore creating the real probability of conflict between China and the United States. In 2019, Rand Corporation published a study that talked about how the United States could contain Russia and overthrow Russia, and they talked about creating conflicts around the entire periphery of Russia. What we see happening today is the script being flipped, and we're seeing conflicts take place around the world that put pressure on the United States and its order, and I think you're going to see more of that. I can't say that this is a deliberate strategy on the part of Russia and China to promote these conflicts, but what I can say is that these conflicts will occur, and you're going to see 2024 become a year where the United States is going to be called upon to put out a whole bunch of brush fires, and it's going to exhaust the United States. And this is part of that continual process of transitioning away from a global singularity capable of handling these threats to a nation that will, while still influential and powerful, will have to figure out how to deal with a multipolar world in order to manage better these crises.
Scott, wie immer herzlichen Dank für deine Zeit und deine aufschlussreichen Analysen. Wir wünschen dir einen schönen Urlaub und frohe Weihnachten.
Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Dankeschön. Liebe Zuschauer, wie immer, euch herzlichen Dank fürs Zuschauen. Wenn euch die Sendung gefallen hat, teilt unser Video breit in den sozialen Medien und abonniert unseren Kanal Gegenpol. Scott Ritter wird in den kommenden Wochen in Urlaub und auf Reise sein. Unser nächstes Interview mit ihm findet daher erst wieder Ende Januar statt. Wir versorgen euch aber wie gewohnt jede Woche mit aktuellen Analysen und Nachrichtenbeiträgen. Daher, wenn ihr mögt, folgt uns auch auf den Plattformen Odyssey und X, ehemals Twitter. Und wenn ihr Fragen habt, die wir im kommenden Jahr an Scott Ritter stellen sollen, oder wenn ihr Ideen habt für Interviewpartner, mit denen wir unbedingt mal sprechen sollten, schreibt sie uns in die Kommentare. Wir vom Gegenpol-Team wünschen euch allen schöne Feiertage und frohe Weihnachten. Ich sage Tschüss und wünsche euch einen guten Rutsch ins neue Jahr. Wir sehen uns Ende Januar wieder bei Im Auge des Bruders mit Scott Ritter.